as contaminants.
It starts early in classrooms. History rewritten, symbols saluted, indoctrination, over-education.
And then when you get to high school, you start literally learning how to be a soldier already with the age of 16. Once you finish high school, you're supposed to quite immediately, as soon as possible, with 18, go to the army. It's obligatory. I don't even remember using the words Palestinians in school. Arabs was there, and they're always some kind of in a context of being our enemies, where I would say that the word closely to Palestinians, we have the word, so in the Bible it says Plishtim. So these were also our enemies. And then I think the connection that I would make as a kid, when I started hearing the word Palestinians, I connected it, the connotation was to these Plishtim from the Bible who were our enemies. So you learn specifically about the heritage of Judaism, but it's all Zionism actually. That's another thing as an adult that I had to relearn Judaism when I came out of Israel.
Today in Palestine's Gaza, the Zionist ideology is manifesting its most natural state, one of extreme, lawless brutality. Palestinians are being murdered, starved, and stripped of every basic right.
There is a genocide. They have killed 18,000 children. They have declared a full closure. Over the closure, no food, no water, no electricity, no fuel, with a determination to punish the Palestinian people, to target the Palestinian people. This might lead to creating the conditions of life that would be physical and biological destruction for Palestinians.
On each gurney was 3 to 5 kids, almost exclusively kids. 90% of our new admissions were kids. And there'd be 15, 20 kids coming in at the end of every bombing. A third were dead by the time they got to us. A third would die in front of us. And a third we'd take to the operating room. And most of them would die. No kid gets shot twice by mistake by a sniper. It doesn't happen by mistake. They were deliberately targeted. And that's not beyond a war crime. That's targeted assassinations. And it helps me formulate my opinion of what's really occurring in Gaza.
How is this genocidal system flourishing? Billions in US aid, year after year.
I think there's not only an effort within the military and our government institutions, but it's an effort by the media, by our executive branch, legislative branch. I mean, even local state governments. I think every institution at this point has a level of corruption that keeps us censored to the truth and reality of what's actually happening. Fox News, CNN, even MSNBC, all of these news organizations have been censoring the truth.
Netanyahu hasn't been condemned by the American government. The American government hasn't sanctioned Netanyahu. In fact, they have doubled down.
One telephone call can stop all wars. Israel cannot thrive without American taxpayer paid for bombs. That's all it would take.
Meanwhile, 1.25 million Palestinians face catastrophic hunger in Gaza. Aid remains blocked. Families are starving.
This dictatorship, they really have no limits. And if they could, they would starve all the Palestinians to death. And actually what they tried to do for 20 months, they destroyed all the aid system, they destroyed the water sewage system, they destroyed all the capacity of the Palestinian people to remain alive in that region.
Over in Palestine's occupied West Bank, apartheid defines daily life.
I don't have any right, in the contrary of the Israeli settlers who live close to my house illegally. They have more rights than me in my own neighborhood. They are under the Israeli civilian law with full civilian rights and political rights. And we, the Palestinians, who are living, in our land, we don't have any rights. Basic rights we don't have. We don't have enough water, enough electricity.
But Palestinians refuse to leave. Staying is resisting. Resistance against a system that silences and suppresses an entire people.
Palestinians are staying and remaining because for us, it's about that remaining in the land is a kind of resistance. And we call it all the time, existence is resistance.
We mobilize to stop the genocide. We mobilize to defeat Zionism, to defeat imperialism, to create a better society for every human being and every being on this planet. It's our task to do so.
The Zionists ignoring everything about the Jewish belief. In the Jewish belief, the state of Israel will come to an end 100%.
Zionism,
They say you can communicate ideas, opinions, but you cannot communicate wisdom. Partly it's correct, but after 2 days, we're going to be well informed and wiser than we are today now. So wisdom can be communicated in some way. Welcome to our event. I feel very privileged to be a part of this event. I think we're going to be listening to different people from different ages, like 9 grade students, 10 grade students will be speaking about this important topic on the same stage, sharing the same stage with professors, academicians, university students. That's what's different with this event. I am Mehmet Rüştü Türker. I'm the coordinator of the program. You'll be seeing me running up and down, busy with things, but I'm always ready to listen to you if you have any problems, any ideas to be shared. I'm ready to listen to you. Now, I want to announce your hosts, 9-year-old students, today's hosts. Mr. Emir Solmaz and Mr. Eymen Çam will be here. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, esteemed educators, respected speakers, and dear students. Welcome to our symposium. Today and tomorrow, we gather not just to listen, but to understand, to bear witness, and to discuss some of the most pressing moral and geopolitical issues of our time, centering on Palestine, the international order, and our shared responsibilities.
To formally open our program, we will now move to our first distinguished speaker of the morning, Dr. Mithat Alamerovich. In an era where history often repeats itself because the signs are ignored, his presentation is deeply profound, how they tried to warn us. Please welcome Dr. Alamerovich to the stage.
Okay, thank you very much. Dear researchers, dear delegates, dear teachers, dear students, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning to you all. I welcome you to this CTC conference. I'm happy to see so many familiar and new faces in front of me. While we were preparing this for this event, we had many aspects to start from, and we had many aspects to speak about. However, the historical, political, social, and cultural effects of the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, actually of the Israeli occupation, always came to be the most important of all, especially the political Zionism and its effect on the world where we live, especially in the Muslim world, has always become a very sensitive topic in international relations. For many Muslims, Palestine actually it's not only a problem or a political issue, but it's also a humanitarian, religious, and emotional matter related or connected to identity, justice, and historical memory. What is the impact of wars, displacement, media narratives, Islamophobia, political divisions within the Muslim world, and what are the broader consequences of conflict on social cohesion in Muslim societies? Somebody might relate it to the everlasting conflict East-West. Someone might relate it to the global power struggle and struggle for world resources and trade. Some might refer to it as a cultural and religious clash. Even though the answer might be multidimensional, it is more than obvious that most of the people that suffer are Muslims. And they suffer because they're Muslims. I'm going to start my presentation with some historical perspective from about the Zionism. Actually, it is related to the political Zionism. I know that you will be hearing about these information about these things many times in the next 2 days. But I would like to make a short review of what actually what is actually the history of political Zionism. Even though the political Zionism emerges in Central Europe as a movement, actually as an idea, it starts in Kiev, at that time the Russian Empire, and it was a result of the riot that happened in Kiev, and when the Russian authorities find out that actually the riot was initiated by immigrants, Jewish immigrants from Istanbul. Then the answer to that was really harsh, and the riot was, I can say, shut down, but in blood. Later on in Europe, when Theodor Herzl spoke about increased anti-Semitism in Europe, actually, he was speaking with all the empires and all those authority or states around Europe, and they all had some sort of agreement or solution for the Jewish question, because the Jews in the past have been also very powerful in the financial sector. So in Central Europe, we know that the Austrian Empire, even East, the Russian Empire, the British Empire, they have all offered some solution, some lands, some territorial solution to the Zionist movement, but that never was accepted by the Zionists. All the problem for the Middle East, let's make the story short. All the problem in the Middle East and Palestine actually start with World War I and the Balfour Declaration. Actually, the Balfour Declaration, you will be hearing about this declaration many times in the next 2 days. The Balfour Declaration is, most of the historians, they only see it as a declaration, but actually it's an end of a ban for the Jews to settle and organize themselves in bigger groups in Palestine. That ban was against the Jews lasted for more than 2,000 years. And the Ottomans, before that the Romans and the Latins and the Crusades, none of them lifted that ban. So the Balfour Declaration actually allowed them. After that, afterwards, the British mandate in Palestine was organized, and then the hell, actually, all the evil against the Palestinians and the Muslims in that part of the world started. It is actually, the Balfour Declaration states that Israel should be a Jewish home, like a home, a national home for Jewish people. But as the video mentioned earlier, a Jewish state, Israel, actually means non-Palestinians living there freely. And later on, with the creation of Israel in 1948 and all those wars and catastrophes and terrible things that happened to the Palestinians in the Middle East, in 67, 73, and the later one with the genocide in Gaza, started a few years ago, they have actually not only affected the Palestinians and Israel, they have also affected the whole region, especially the Muslim majority region. We can see that it affects it goes on with wars or riots or even worse, military operations in the Middle East and wider, in Africa and even in Central Asia and so on. Actually, the Palestinian issue has very strong influence relations among Muslim majority countries. Starting from the fact that only 100 years ago, there were 0 independent Muslim countries in the world. You hear, well, it was 0. In 1919, 1920, there were 0 Muslim countries in the world. They were all occupied and colonized. And today, we have around 50, but most of them, they are not independent. The way how they function, it's actually the way how Israel wants them to function. Israel actually, with the Zionist movements, with all their allies, they actually influence the political relations among Muslim majority countries. And even today we can see that even though most of the Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries, they publicly support Palestine, the divisions based on political interest, economic alliances, sectarian conflicts, and region rivalries have weakened collective actions. And there is almost no action. All the conflicts in Syria, Yemen, Libya, Iraq, and elsewhere have also distracted attention from the Palestinian issue. And we now know that all those conflicts were initiated, all that bloodshed was initiated by Israel and its allies. Everything that happened in Syria in the past 15 years, everything that happens in Palestine, in Jordan, in Iraq, in Libya, even in Iran, and elsewhere, in Yemen or Somalia or elsewhere in the world, especially in the Muslim world, was initiated for the good of Israel. The aim was not always a political control. The aim was also destruction of those societies, destruction of the cohesion in those societies. How they did it? Modern conflicts are fought not only with weapons, but also through media, language, and public narratives. During wars, government and political groups frequently use propaganda to justify military actions and gain international support. However, in many cases, Muslims have been portrayed in some media environments as extremists, violent, or uncivilized. And such portraits contribute to Islamophobia and reinforce harmful stereotypes. One of the aspects of the problem was the use of military power and that political messaging that we see, that we follow on a daily basis. The military superiority plays a central role in modern geopolitical conflicts. Actually, when we see in the Middle East, where we have more than 20, 30 states, we see that the military superiority of Israel and their allies prevents or blocks every possible intervention by any of the states, or showing at least humanitarian support for the victims actually of that Zionist project. The critics of Israeli military operations argue that excessive force, civilian casualties, destruction of infrastructure, prolonged occupation, they all contribute to cycles of trauma, anger, and instability. Even Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, they report the same. But the third dimension warfare, fourth dimension warfare, fifth dimension warfare, it's something that we see on the ground. And we see that the victims of all of those projects are actually the Muslims. The widespread use of social media has transformed how conflict are viewed globally. Images of destruction, displaced families, civilian suffering rapidly spread worldwide, influencing public opinion and international activism. The Zionist project goes even further, and it creates cultural and moral concerns in the Muslim world, but actually around the world, around the globe. Many intellectuals, they argue that modern globalization has created significant cultural and moral pressures within Muslim societies, but I would add that also it does in other societies, like weekend and family, identity crisis, social polarizations. They are often discussed and challenges that facing younger generations. One of the most important segments for Muslims in this is Palestine and its collective memory. But what does collective memory mean? Collective memory means that we should repeat on a daily basis what's going on in Palestine, why those people are suffering, what's the level of their suffering. Because for many Muslims worldwide, not only the region, Palestine represents more than a territorial dispute. It symbolizes collective pain, resistance, displacement, and struggle for justice. But not only in Palestine. This one happened 30 years ago in Bosnia with the same reason. It happens in Afghanistan. It happened in Iran. It happened in Iraq. The stories of refugee camps, destroyed homes, imprisoned civilians, they are part of our collective memory. They should stay there as a reminder of what is happening. and why is happening. The emotional connection to Jerusalem, which contains important Islamic holy sites, also strengthens religious attachment to the issue among Muslims globally. In the Muslim world, leadership involves not only political power, but also moral responsibility towards future generations. As we've been following for the past century, we've seen that not many of the Muslim leaders around the world are able to recognize, maybe they're able to recognize, but that they're not able to intervene in the process. What is one of the main reasons for this conference was the importance of education and the future of the Muslims, of Muslim countries. Young people increasingly use digital platforms to raise awareness, but actually this is not important. This is not enough. They need to learn how to act in humanitarian crisis, organize campaigns, or challenge media narratives, because those media narratives, they are aimed towards Muslim youth. And universities, NGOs, and youth organizations, they play a major role in encouraging such critical thinking and civic engineering. This is why many intellectuals stress that emotional reaction alone is insufficient without intellectual preparation and strategic planning. When we follow the modern political reaction to, let's say, to the last event in Palestine, but this is only one of the events that happens in the Muslim world and that is part of the Zionist project for the Middle East. We see public demonstrations in Turkey, Bosnia, Pakistan, Indonesia, all around the Arab world, the Western countries, even the US and the Americas, and they show that the issue remains globally influential. But media activism has also increased international awareness, especially among younger generations. Unfortunately for the Muslims in the Middle East and in the wider geographic area, we can see that the diplomatic circles and political circles and economic circles, they're all trying to support the Zionist idea. And the aim of the Zionist idea is actually destruction of the Muslims and the Muslim world. So, actually, I did a small intro to this forum, to this panel today, but I'm sure that most of our speakers will give much bigger support to my views, and they will express their ideas and give you more information about the problem, especially those that have personal experience with the Middle East and especially with the Palestine actions in the Middle East. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. No, not this.
Thank you, Mr. Alamerovic. It is now my profound honor to introduce a towering figure in Islamic and global studies. Professor Dr. Sami Al-Aryan is the director of the Center for Islam and Global Affairs at Istanbul Sabahattin Zaim University.
For decades, he has been a tireless academic and intellectual voice for the Palestinian cause and global justice. Today, he will address Palestine, the key to reviving the Ummah and rebuilding Islamic civilization. Professor, the floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وبعد. It's my honor and privilege really to be with you today in addressing this topic and particularly addressing it to young people who would be the future of this ummah. It's very important that we understand the time that we live in right now in order to project the future. And I take the verses from Surah Al-Isra as my starting point. Al-Isra, which is Surah number 17, was revealed to the Prophet 3 years before he migrated to Medina. And today we celebrate the start of year 1448. So this has happened over 1450 years ago. And it came at a time when the Prophet lost his wife and uncle in what is called the year of the sadness. And in that surah, particularly the first few verses, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about a conflict that is going to take place between Bani Israel and the believers. And it starts by saying that there will be two mischief, corruption taken by the children of Israel. And that in each case, they will be responded to by the believers as if to say that the starting point of an Islamic civilization would take place after that conflict. وَقَضَيْنَا إِلَى بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ فِي الْكِتَابِ لَتُفْسِدُنَّ فِي الْأَرْضِ مَرَّتَيْنِ وَلَتَعْلُنَّ عُلُوًّا كَبِيرًا. We've ordained in this book, the Quran, that the children of Israel will commit twice mischief, great corruption on earth, and in one of them they will have great elevation. They will have great power. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ أُولَهُمَا, when the first one comes to pass, بَعَثْنَا عَلَيْكُمْ عِبَادًا لَنَا أُولِي بَأْسٍ شَدِيدٍ, will send upon you servants of ours who will be mighty, stern, powerful. فَجَاسُوا خِلَالَ الدِّيَارِ وَكَانَ وَعْدًا مَفْعُولًا, they will enter your homes and it is a fulfilled promise. Now you may read in some of the interpreters of the Quran that this is something happened in the past during the Romans or the Persians. In fact, this is not correct. This actually happened right after the believers went from Mecca to Medina. And there, the corruption and mischief of Bani Israel was about how to undermine the new message, how to undermine the Prophet, how to put hurdles, obstacles, how to try to assassinate him, to bring about as much force from the Arabian Peninsula in order to end and finish this nascent movement that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent. And we know from the different stories in the Seerah, I don't have time to go over all of them, but how this happened during Bani Qaynuqa, Bani Nadir, Bani Qurayza, Khaybar, Al-Ahzab, when they went tried to bring all these Arab tribes to finish off the community of believers. This is great corruption. When they tried to assassinate the Prophet more than once, it's a great mischief that Allah will not allow. Had they been successful, that would be the end of the religion of Islam, the mission of Islam, the message that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to send to mankind. And then the ayat switches to another part. So this particular confrontation that took place from the moment that the Islamic civilization, what I call the first universality of Islam, started in Medina, it was a great mischief and corruption in the sight of Allah. And it was ending there, and there it started a great Islamic civilization that spanned the history for 1300 years. From that moment on until the fall of the Caliphate here in Istanbul. This was one continuum that showed the whole world the light of the Quran, despite all the problems that were taking place at different times. And then the verse switches, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَا لَكُمُ الْكَرَّةَ عَلَيْهِمْ. It says, ثُمَّ, which takes a long time in this place, 1300 years, will give you the power over them. Give to whom? To the children of Israel. Over whom? The community of believers who entered their home and who defeated them in the first place. This is not about Persians or Romans. This is about the Muslims. ثم رددنا لكم الكرة عليهم وأمددناكم بأموال وبنين وجعلناكم أكثر نفيرا. We will supply you with men, with wealth, and the ability to mobilize the whole world for your cause. Indeed, they are not more numerous, but they are capable, and we saw this particularly during a genocide, how they were able to mobilize the whole world for their cause. And if you go 100 verses inside this surah, verse 104, وَقُلْنَا مِنْ بَعْدِهِ لِبَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ اسْكُنُوا الْأَرْضَ, after they were told that they will be scattered around the world, after they refused to obey their prophet. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ, when the second one comes to pass, when the second promise comes to pass, when the second corruption comes to pass, جِئْنَا بِكُمْ لَفِيفًا, will bring you back in droves, in groups. And that's exactly what happened in Palestine during last century. They were brought back. This is the second corruption. This is the second mischief. This is the second confrontation between truth and falsehood, between justice and injustice, that is taking place in the land that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decided over 1400 years ago. In ahsantum, ahsantum li anfusikum. If you do good for yourselves. If you do good, being non-Zionist. Wa in asatum, and if you insist in being Zionist, and I will explain what that is, as our first speaker spoke briefly about. فَإِذَا جَاءَ وَعْدُ الْآخِرَةِ, when the second promise comes to pass, لِيَسُوءُ وُجُوهَكُمْ, they will disfigure your faces, وَلِيُتَبِّرُوا مَا عَلَوْا تَتْبِيرًا, and they will destroy you completely. So what is being told to us by these verses is that the Bani Israel, the people who will commit mischief and corruption on earth, they will do it twice. The first was during the Prophet's time, and they were defeated, and then a whole Islamic civilization started, and it ended. And the second corruption, the second mischief, the second time they come back with great elevation, with great power, with great strength, with great ability to mobilize the whole world. This is the time we are living in. We have to know the place where you are living. And for a second civilization to come about, for another universality of Islam to start, you have to confront this challenge. This is not a challenge for the Palestinians. This is a challenge for the whole Ummah, indeed for the whole world. And this is where we have to understand our starting point. The Zionist movement is not, and I repeat, is not about Judaism. Judaism is a religion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed. They went astray. But we have no problems with Jews being Jews. This is not an Islam versus Judaism conflict. This is not Muslims versus Jews conflict. Because in Islam we understand and we recognize Judaism as a revealed religion. We recognize Jews as people of the book. where they are respected and recognized, and the Islamic history attests to that. In fact, the Jewish Encyclopedia calls them the Jews of Islam, those Jews who lived under the auspices on the lands of Muslims, as being the golden age of the Jews. We define people that we are in conflict with according to their conduct, not according to their belief. So this is not a Jew versus Muslim conflict. This is a believer in truth, in justice, in the Almighty, against the corruption, the aggression, the violence of those who would like to use these methods for their own objectives. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين, we read in the Quran in Surah 60, verses 8 and 9. Allah does not forbid you from dealing justly with those who do not fight you because of your religion, who do not fight you and kick you out and displace you from your homes. لا ينهاكم الله عن الذين لم يقاتلوكم في الدين ولم يخرجوكم من دياركم أن تبروهم وتقسطوا إليهم إن الله يحب المقسطين. That you deal with them justly and kindly. Allah loves those who are just. إنما ينهاكم الله, but Allah forbid you from dealing with these people, from normalizing with them, from taking them as patrons, as friends, as protectors. إنما ينهاكم الله عن الذين قاتلوكم في الدين, those who fight you because of your faith. وأخرجوكم من دياركم, and kicked you out, displaced you from your homes. وظاهروا على إخراجكم, or they assisted them in displacing you, in kicking you out of your homes. أن تولوهم ومن يتولهم فأولئك هم الظالمين. Whoever takes them as such are among the oppressors, the tyrants, the transgressors. These are the principles we live by. And therefore, we have to understand who the enemy is. The enemy is the Zionists and the Zionist movement. And who is a Zionist? A Zionist is any person who believes or acknowledges or recognizes that Jews have any sovereign right in Palestine, even 1 inch. They are Zionists. They could be Jews, Christians, Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, atheists, or no religion at all. Could be anybody who believes in that is a Zionist. And I tell people, if you believe in a so-called two-state solution, and I joke about this, but I really mean it, you're 78% Zionist. Because they believe they have or entitled to 78% of Palestine. And that is not the case. Because Zionism and the Zionist movement and the Zionist state and the Zionist structures have certain features that are incompatible with any decent, just, truthful, free people. The features of Zionism is that it's a settler, colonial, racist, supremacist, aggressive movement that wants to uproot the indigenous people in Palestine and replace them with Jews around the world. Not because they are Jews, but because they are somehow of a higher racial quality. Because they have redefined Judaism and Jews from being a religious or a tradition into somehow an ethnicity. It's an ethno-supremacist state. And it has adopted all the different nationalist supremacist movements that existed in Europe in the 19th century, whether it was Nazism, fascism, you name them. All these supremacist movements who were starting to bring different states and different ideologies in order to control people, it went after them. And it could not have succeeded without being adopted by a great power, first by the British Empire and now by the American Empire. That is simply what Zionists is about. They are not about to reach a political settlement in any notion, because they know they stole the land, they know they displaced the people, They know they committed ethnic cleansing. They know that they have been committing genocide. They know that they are against any and all moral values and ethical values that they should be abiding by, because they know they cannot survive their presence and existence in Palestine knowing all this without making sure that all the people in the region would be divided along ethnic lines, sectarian lines, religious, linguistics, tribal, you name them. Therefore, we have to recognize that Zionism is not about simply subjugating the Palestinians. If it was up to me, I wouldn't call it the Palestinian question. I wouldn't call it the Palestinian problem or the Palestinian cause. What makes Palestine central is not the suffering of the Palestinian people. And I tell people, many people in this region suffered. Maybe not like in the last 3 years as genocide, but many suffered. People in Afghanistan, Afghanis, Iraqis, Syrians, Yemenis, Sudanese, Libyans, Bosnia, many people suffered in this region. There is nothing special about Palestinian suffering despite a genocide. And it's not about being a land of the prophets, or the first of the two Qiblas, or the third of the holy shrines. That's important and dear and sacred and significant for many Muslims. But that does not make it central. What makes it central is the nature of the enemy. That enemy is different from all others. Many other enemies may be local. Their danger and threat could be to the people who live in that area. But the danger and threat of the Zionist state, the Zionist entity, the Zionist ideology, the Zionist movement is for the whole region and even the whole world. They say they can't survive, and they have that actually in black and white in writing. Unless this region is weak, fragmented, exhausted, unable to do anything. They will go after us if we try to unite, as they did when Nasser tried to unite Syria and Egypt back in the 50s and early 60s. They will go after you if you're trying to advance scientifically, as they did in killing and assassinating many scientists around the Muslim world, around the Arab world, in Iraq, in Iran, in different places, in Egypt, and around the world indeed. They will not allow us to even have any kind of democratic institutions or democracies in our countries, as they came in big way with the counter-revolutionaries, as it happened in the so-called Arab Spring. They will not allow any civilization. They will not allow any model. They will not allow you to advance in any sphere. They will not allow economic development. They will not allow scientific advancement. They will not allow any civilization to exist, because they think all this could be a threat to their project. And they will go after us. Take an example of Sudan. Sudan reached and got its independence in 1956. By 1957, there was a unit in the Mossad, the intelligence service of Israel, and the foreign ministry in how to break up Sudan. So in 2010, when Sudan was split between North and South, and the president of South Sudan, Salva Kiir, went and visited Israel, on the tarmac, in the airport, he said, if there was any person to credit our independence, it would be for this person. That person was the station chief in Juba, South Sudan, capital of the Mossad, for many decades. They were working day and night to split Sudan into two, as they have been working day and night to make sure that they can bring about a Kurdish state, not because they care about the Kurds, but because they want buffer states to control and to have buffer states through helping minorities. They want a Druze state, they want a Kurdish state, they want a Maronite state, they want different states all throughout the Muslim world. This is how they can rule. They wrote this actually in April 1982. You can Google it and find out. It's called the Oded-Yinan Plan, in which they want this region to be into 43 countries, 43 entities. After the fall of Bashar al-Assad, they said it publicly. They wanted to split Syria into 4 countries, into Druze state, Alawite state, Kurdish state, Sunni state. This is how they can control the region. So this is not a Palestinian problem, it's an Israeli problem. They say it publicly that every regime that is powerful in this region is a direct threat to Israel. They will go after Iran today, they'll come after Turkey tomorrow, after Pakistan day after tomorrow. This is what we are facing. And therefore, we cannot jump over these challenges and talk about different issues. We have to confront this challenge head on. And the solution to this, we have to recognize, is not to allow the emergence, the expansion, and the presence of a Zionist state that's trying to control the whole region, to become the hegemon. And if there is any lesson from October the 7th, it is this. They have been exposed. In the past, they were hiding behind all these liberal notions, liberal concepts. The only democracy in the Middle East, the state where there is a rule of law, where they respect human rights and part of Western civilization, all that has been exposed as mere lies. We saw and experienced, we witnessed a genocide. For 2 years, over 2 years, civilian life was completely destroyed in Gaza. Hospitals, clinics, mosques, churches, schools, kindergartens, universities, electrical grids, water desalination plants, markets, even animals and plants were not spared. Tens of thousands of people, 70% of which are women and children, have been killed. Some children were sniped once and twice and 3 times. This is not a country that values human life. This is a country that devalues life because of their racism, supremacism, and because of their nature. And therefore, when we talk about what is the ultimate solution, as the world has figured out, when we had Nazism, we could not negotiate with Nazism. The same ideology that prefers racial groups over others, that wants to dominate one group over other groups. We could not negotiate apartheid with an apartheid regime and leave it in place, leave their supremacist and racist structures. And in the same way, we cannot leave these racist, supremacist, Zionist structures in place and we deal with them as if they are normal. They are not normal. And we should not accept them as normal. And the only solution then becomes the dismantlement of these Zionist structures. That is how we should deal with them. That is the lesson of October 7th. October 7th didn't come in vacuum. The people who took that decision, whether you agree with them or not, it didn't come in vacuum. In Gaza, they had been living under a 17-year siege, blockade. Not a single thing can go in or out unless the Israelis say so. The West Bank was being confiscated, squeezed every single day, particularly with this government. Smotrich said 1 month after they took over, in January 2023, 9 months before October 7th, Palestinians have 3 options. 1, they have to recognize that this is Jewish state. They have no rights, no civil or political rights. They can live at our leisure. They can live under our control. And if they don't like it, we can give them compensation and they can leave. And if they don't like it, the 3rd option is death. Thousands of Palestinians were prisoners, and they were under extreme pressure, particularly under the regime of Ben Gvir. All the things that they won over decades of struggle, the right to education, visitation, eating, praying together, all these were taken out one by one. Jerusalem was being Judaized, threatened that now they will replace Al-Aqsa and the Dome of the Rock with their third temple. And most importantly, as Netanyahu stood before the United Nations 15 days before to found Al-Aqsa, having a map in his hand and drawing a line that's starting from India, going through the Indian Ocean, Gulf of Oman, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, from there to Jordan and Haifa, and through the Mediterranean to Europe, calling it the India, Middle East, European Economic Corridor. No Palestine there. And he was touting how it's going to come the basically most important power in the region that will safeguard and protect it. And that normalization was coming with Saudi Arabia, with Pakistan and Indonesia. This is what was facing this region, a complete hegemony. And now, after the October 7th, after the destruction, the genocide, the mayhem, they're trying to establish that through brute force. They wanted to have everybody to be subjected to their power. And they want to end with Iran, and then from Iran to the whole Muslim world. If you do not subject yourselves to our power, our control, this is your future. What you're seeing today in Gaza is going to be your future. If the Hezbollah and Lebanon does not accept, then they will see their fate as the fate of Gaza. If Iran does not accept, it will see its fate as Gaza. And if any other power does not accept, that would be their future. So this is an Israeli problem, and every Muslim society, every Arab society, indeed the whole world, is being warned. So how do we do this? When we say dismantle Zionist structures, how do we do this? Well, as in every human endeavor, you have to understand the basis of their power. Why are they powerful? What are the pillars, the imperatives that make them powerful? In my study, I found that they have 12 sources of power. I tell people this is about like you have a house. The Zionist entity, the Zionist state, the Zionist regime is like a state that is sitting on 12 different columns. We have to understand these columns, and we have to know what makes them strong and what will be the counter strategies that will weaken them. You will find that there are two columns that have to do with people. One is exclusivism, only Jews can go there. The other is exclusion, no Palestinian there. So your counter strategies is how you encourage those Zionists to leave and Palestinians to stay and remain and come back. Two have to do with the land. Four have to do with the military doctrine, military power, intelligence, and nuclear power. Two which are international factors, and two are regional factors. Once you understand that and you form your counter strategies, then you try to weaken, undermine this regime, this state. That means we have to build a global movement across the world. And this is happening, and this is one of the blessings of October 7th. The world who has not seen or did not witness the brutality of the Zionist movement, the true meaning of the Zionist ideology, the true behavior of what they are capable of doing in order to reach their objectives, now has seen it all. I tell people we could have spent billions and we would not have reached what the Gaza's blood has shown the world. Now we have this movement across the world, across universities, campuses, across media outlets, different societies, community centers. Millions around the world have been in the streets chanting that this is not something they are willing to tolerate, they are willing to accept, and they became part of the struggle. Building this movement, which goes from continent to continent, country to country, and city to city, is what's going to eventually dismantle this regime and build in Palestine, in the region, structures that will give equal rights to everyone, that would be just, that will free all our organizations, all our countries, all our people. That's what's awaiting us. And in this, we can certainly talk about the future of this region. The coming of a second universality, Islamic universality, that will be a beacon for the world. We're not there trying to dominate or to subjugate people. We're trying to free people, including Jews, by the way. I tell people our endeavor is not that we're going to throw Jews in the sea. Because Zionism, in its racist ideology, tried to convince Jews that they are under threat. When Jews were under threat in the 15th century in Andalusia, they found refuge in the Islamic world. From Morocco to Indonesia, they can go anywhere. They will have that opportunity. It is because of European racism. That's why European Jews felt that they are under threat. And they aligned themselves with European centers and European empires to answer what they called the Jewish question. And the British Empire, through the Balfour Declaration, through mandate, they try to adopt the Zionist project and impose it in the region to solve another problem. Not only they will solve the Jewish question, which is the excess Jews in Europe, transport them to Palestine, but they can also solve the Orient problem. That is, whenever they subjugate this region, whenever they invade this region will come back and kick them out, as happened in the Crusaders. So they wanted to solve two problems with one. So they allied themselves with the Zionists as the Zionists allied themselves with imperialist powers. We are freeing the whole world of imperialism, of control. And then we tell the Jews, if Europe does not accept you, you're welcome in the Islamic world. From Tanja to Jakarta, from Morocco to Indonesia, but not at the expense of the Palestinian rights, not as sovereign entities, but as refugees unable to find decent life in your own countries. That is the ultimate solution. That's what we call for. And I tell people and the youth, and particularly the group here today, you need to realize the moment of history you're living in. This is the moment of history we are trying to start a new civilization in this region. As the first generation started in the Medina state. But we have to confront the challenges before us. And one of the biggest challenges is foreign influence, foreign control, particularly Zionist control in our societies. You have to form groups and movements to address this issue. You have to understand and to identify the Zionist and foreign control in your own societies. And you have to fight it, and you have to confront it. Without it, you will never become truly sovereign. You never become truly independent. 57 Muslim countries met twice during the genocide. November 11th, 2023. November 11th, a year later, 2024. They could not agree on how to confront a genocide. They could not prevent a genocide. They cannot stop a genocide. They couldn't end ethnic cleansing. Why? Because we're not independent and we're not sovereign. 50 Muslim countries have more than 20 million soldiers. Tens of thousands of planes and tanks and armor carriers and missiles and so on and so forth. They could not agree. Even the only thing I agreed on, which is to bring relief to a starving child in Palestine, to a thirsty woman in Palestine, and they couldn't even do that before Netanyahu says, okay. That tells us that we are not sovereign, we're not independent, and your mission is to make sure that your country is sovereign and your country is independent. And to do that, you need to rid it of foreign influence and foreign control in all spheres, not only in direct military, but also in political realm, in the economic realm, in the cultural realm, in all realms. So I leave you with this. What is our goal, strategic goal, is to dismantle the Zionist structures in Palestine. That this is not a Palestinian issue. This is an Israeli problem that concerns everyone in the region: Turks, Persians, Arabs, Pakistanis, Indonesians, the whole world. And that to deal with this issue, you have to know that Israel is a direct national security threat to Turkey. We're not asking for Turkey to lend a hand to the Palestinians. The Palestinians have been at the forefront of this struggle. And if it weren't for their resistance and resilience and ability to stand up to the Zionist aggression and the Zionist onslaught, they would have gone much further as they trying to establish Greater Israel. But whether we realize this or not, they will always be a threat to your future and to the region's future and to the world's future. And we have to recognize this, deal with this, prepare ourselves for this. This is the highest struggle of our time. And if we do not or had any doubts about this, I think after October 7th, it should be very clear that this is a threat that is facing all of humanity. Thank you very much for listening. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Al-Arian, for that powerful and sobering perspective. One of the core pillars of this event is amplifying the voices of the youth who will carry this legacy forward. Please welcome Marmara Anatolian Imam Hatip High School 10th grade student Mehmet Akif Ergani to the stage.
Dear researchers, dear delegates, dear students and teachers. I have about 10 minutes to deliver my talk, and I would like to use this time to offer an original contribution to this program. Academics from numerous top-tier universities have been invited for this two-day event. And since I cannot speak in as much detail as the experts in their respective fields, I have chosen a different angle. By the end of this program, we will already have gained considerable, invaluable insight into topics such as the history of Palestine, the events of October 7th, its causes and its consequences, the history of Zionism, and the realities of 1948 and beyond. I consider it quite important to address this issue specifically from Turkey's perspective, because we have unfortunately witnessed how paralyzed, inactive, and indifferent other global powers have remained throughout this devastating process. In times of war, ultimately, it is raw power that speaks. And Israel has never hesitated to demonstrate this to its adversaries time and time again. For this reason, we must examine Turkey's relationship with Israel as an interaction between two distinct visions of power in a region where Turkey holds significant historical, cultural, and geopolitical weight. Israel's commission of genocide and its extraordinary efforts to engage in actions that provoke global public outcry have, since the post-2030 process began, it has pushed even those who initially favored or remained neutral toward it into opposition. However, I must emphasize that our fundamental stance regarding Israel is based neither solely on this recent genocide, nor merely on the occupation they have maintained since 1948. It goes much deeper than modern political alignments. Throughout their 1,000-year history, the Turks have been honored by Islam and have proudly carried its banner across continents through various states and empires. The principle of just war in Islam is profoundly simple. It is to prevent oppression and ensure justice. Oppression, or zulm in Arabic, can be interpreted in various ways. But to ground it in our current reality, expelling a society, including innocent civilians, from their ancestral homeland and systematically massacring them constitutes the absolute definition of oppression. To understand the modern Turkish Muslim state's responsibility, we must look at the prophetic tradition. The well-known hadith explains this concept very clearly. The Prophet, upon whom be peace, said, "Whoever among you sees an evil, let him undo it with his hand. If he is unable to do so, then with his tongue. If he is unable to do even that, then with his heart. And that is the weakest degree of faith." The most generally accepted classical interpretation of this hadith dictates a clear division of labor. Rectifying evil by force or state mechanism is the duty of the rulers and authorities. Rectifying evil through speech and truth-telling is the duty of scholars and intellectuals. And for those who hold no practical or executive power, the duty is to inwardly detest that evil and refuse to normalize it. As we can see in the political and state sphere, the duty of a Muslim manifests itself as a multi-layered, active call to establish justice and eliminate tyranny. The duty of a Muslim state, politically speaking, lies in actively preventing oppression. Furthermore, let it be stated unequivocally, within this framework, any targeting of civilians by any side is absolutely unacceptable. Islam dictates that there is only governance through justice, and the means must be as pure as the ends. In other words, we can summarize this final framework we have arrived as follows. Israel governs the territories under its control not through justice, law, or ethics, but through massacres, oppression, and tyranny. Conversely, Muslims, as stewards obligated to uphold divine justice on earth, are commanded to put an end to this tyranny and establish justice. After all, God honors nations through a great mission of stewardship and justice and reward, not by oppressing the land and subjugating other people while calling them infidels, as some distorted ideologies believe. I think it's crucial to point this out today, that without this foundational understanding, I do not believe that supporting Palestine can be fully or meaningfully justified for us. At least as a Muslim Turk, I do not believe we can stand up to Israel based solely on contemporary secular justifications like wanting to be on the right side of history. Let me be entirely clear. I have no issue with those who act on such secular grounds. Human conscience is God's gift, and it is valuable wherever it is found. It's just that, for us, such framing holds very little depth within the context of a 1,000-year-old Turkish Islamic tradition and the tradition that was started by the Prophet Muhammad, as our esteemed guest has said. Our mandate does not come from modern political trends, but from an enduring civilizational responsibility to stand against oppression wherever it rears its head. Thank you for listening.
Our next speaker, Nida Al-Abadla, brings an essential perspective to the narrative that the mainstream media often ignores. As a Palestinian lived in Gaza, she is here to remind us that history is not born in a vacuum by documenting what she has been through with very personal details. Her talk is titled, "It Didn't Start on October 7th." Please welcome Nida Al-Abadla.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank all the organizers of this significant event, including Cut to the Chase and Marmara Imam Khatib School, and of course the Boğaziçi University for hosting us today. So, first of all, my name is Nida, and I'm a Palestinian student from Gaza, now pursuing my master's degree in political science and international relations at Fatih Sultan Mehmet University. So, my title today is simple but heavy. It did not start on October 7th. Before I go deeper, let me share with you moments from my own life, not to make you pity me, but to help you understand why this title exists in the first place. I never felt the word grandfather like other children. My mother's father was killed by an Israeli tank when my mother was only 8 years old. He was driving back home, back from work, when an Israeli tank ran over his car. A tank, a civilian, and his car. A grandfather I never met. My father's father died, not from war, but from grief. His eldest son, Mustafa, was chased by the occupation one night and never returned. The heart broke, the body followed. As you see, my loss did not start on October 7th. It started even before I was born. So now let me take you back to the year 2000. I was 10 years old. I was in school in a small, beautiful, quiet coastal village called Al-Karara, near Khan Yunis. It was a normal day until it wasn't. Suddenly, airplanes, bombing, gunfire, everyone screamed. The army invaded, run. I was only 10 years old. My brother Ali was 8. I don't know how, but I transformed in that moment from a child into someone who had to act. I remembered my father's instructions. I ran to find Ali, but his classroom was empty. I searched the school garden, but nothing. A teacher told me to go home. I said, I can't go without my brother. She said he probably already left, but I kept searching until I lost hope. I walked home through gunfire and drones above my head, crying, terrified. When I arrived home, Ali was already there. He hugged me and said simply, I'm not little. I remembered Baba's instructions too. We were children, but we learned early that in Gaza, childhood is a luxury. Now moving to the year 2003. A normal night, deep sleep. Then my mother's voice trembling, Nida, wake up. I was sleepy, I refused. Then she said, the soldiers are in the house. They want us all to go to the ground floor. I lift my head. An Israeli soldier with a large gun was standing next to my mother. I froze. I shocked. My mother said, don't worry, just come with me. The army has just decided to turn our 4-story building into a military post. We were 16 people, including small children, locked in my grandmother's small bedroom until 8 a.m. My father and uncles could do nothing because the army threatens to use us, the children. That night, I saw my grandmother's courage, but I also learned that in Gaza, Your home is not always yours. 2014, the third major Israeli offensive on Gaza since the withdrawal. They bombed the mosque next to our home. Toxic gas came through our broken windows. My father and brother Ali decided to stay. The rest of us went to my uncle's house in Khan Yunis, my mother's family house. We didn't want to leave. We always said that if death is written, let us all die together. But my father insisted. One night, at my uncle's house, the bombing was so intense, I couldn't sleep. Okay, now slide 4. Yes. Part 4. No, it's not that. The one after. Again. The one after. Yes. Okay. Oh. So one night in my uncle's house, the bombing was so intense, I couldn't sleep. Every time it got louder, I checked on my mother, my siblings, my young cousins. They would wake up terrified, then fall back asleep from exhaustion. At about 3 a.m., the sound became horrifying, close, just so close. Then the phone rang. I hesitated, but I answered. I heard a voice saying, "This is the Israeli army. We warn you not to shelter militants." I hung up before hearing the rest. My legs couldn't carry me. I sat on the floor. Then I heard it, the sound of rockets falling from planes. I will never forget this scene as long as I live. I folded my knees to my chest, covered my ears, closed my eyes, and began repeating the Shahada. Then, the explosion. The house shook as if it had been pulled from its foundations. Things flew in the air, but it wasn't our house. It wasn't our turn yet. It was another house in the neighborhood. Then came the smell. The smell of burned human flesh. Then screaming, then crying. That was about 11 years ago. I have never forgotten. And I remember thinking to myself, I will never have children. I will never put them through this trauma. So, the same year, 2014, but in December, my uncle Basil's health collapsed. He needed an urgent kidney transplant. As you know, Gaza's hospitals are not equipped for this. His name was placed on the medical evacuation list, highest priority for Egypt. But as you know, the siege. Rafah crossing was closed. We tried everything. Medical reports, appeals, tears, nothing. Ironically, he was approved to leave on the day he died. In December 23rd, 2014, I lost my second father and my closest friend, killed not by a bomb, but by a closed door. March 2024, my uncle Abdel Jawad refused to leave his home. He stayed. He was killed. The following year, Muhammad, my cousin, only 20 years old, an American sniper shot him in the head while he was trying to get aid to his young sisters. The list did not or does not end. This is just a brief overview of the trauma I've experienced in my life and the people I've lost. But during all of this, I did not stay silent. When I started university in Gaza, I had one tool, my English. I used Facebook and Twitter. I started telling the truth about what was happening. I made friends from Europe and the US. I convinced people, real conversation, real change. In 2016, I joined a program called We Are Not Numbers for young Palestinian writers. We write our real stories in English. We publish them. Our voices reach the world. After 2023, we collected some of these articles into a book. It became a bestseller in the US and Europe. It has been translated into Arabic, Italian, French, and even Japanese, and soon, inshallah, into Turkish. So this book is my answer to those who ask, why didn't you speak up earlier? We did. We did speak. We wrote. The world just wasn't listening. But what now? Maybe it is. So, but where should this global awakening happen? It should be here, in universities. Universities are not factories for degrees. They are the conscience of society. Yet, universities have silent Palestinian voices, canceled events, labeled anti-Zionism as anti-Semitism, not to protect Jews, but to protect political ideology. This is not academic freedom. This is political gatekeeping. I'm not asking you to hate anyone. I'm asking you to think critically. Let's apply the same standards to Israel that we apply to any other country. Let's teach the Nakba alongside the Holocaust, not to compare pain, but to respect truth. Our role as students is to say no more double standards, no more fear of the word Zionism as if it is sacred. Zionism is a political ideology, and all ideologies must be questioned. So what can we do here together? First, educate ourselves beyond headlines. Read Palestinian writers, read historians like Ilan Pepe or Rashid Khalidi, even it is uncomfortable. Second, use our student privileges, organize teach-ins, film screenings, debates. Never censor the word Palestine. Third, support non-violent legal accountability like BDS, not as a punishment, but as a responsibility. Fourth, build coalitions across communities, Jews, Muslims, Christians, seculars, an anti-Zionist movement, not anti-Jewish one. Zionism is not Judaism. Criticizing it is not hatred. It is honesty. In conclusion, I'm not a victim asking for pity. I'm a person asking for justice. And justice does not begin on October 7th. It begins when we finally have the courage to face October 6th and everything before it. My grandfathers, my uncle Basil, my cousin Mohammed, my own childhood with soldiers in my bedroom, the smell of burned flesh, the closed border that killed instead of healed, it didn't start on October 7th. And it will not end until the world stops looking away. Thank you.
Thank you for that vital historical grounding. Next, we invite Yahya Ekrem Yasha from Hakkı Demir Anatolian Imam Hatip High School to share his thoughts with us.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Dear my friends and the masters, teachers. As you know, we all here to talk about Palestine. We need to talk, not just me or not just you. We all need to talk about Palestine. Today, I'm not going to talk about the numbers, as Nida said. The Palestinian injustice is not numbers. Our hardship never stopped until we have enough courage to stop it. Today, I'm not going to talk about the history of Zionism or the number of the families that forced out of their own homes. Already we all know that, or I believe that our masters will come here and talk about with every detail. Today, I'm going to talk about why did we find out what's happening on the Palestine and why did we take action too late? What made us late? To get an answer to this question, we need to ask another question, and that's, how do we know what we know? How do we know what's happening in the world? Any answer? The answer is easy, actually. Thanks to media, of course. We didn't see everything with our own eyes on the Palestine, on the United States, or only Russia maybe. That's not important. We need the media to get informed. But is really everything the media showed us true? Or they showed us really the raw, unfiltered truth? Not actually. No, I'm not saying they lied to us for years. They just choose the serving method. They changed the frames. Because of that, we stayed silent from 1948, Zionism founded and the genocide started. When we know what happened in the most people in the Turkey, it was October 7, but too late. Then why? I said it actually. It's framing effect. For instance, a TV channel in the time that Palestinians killed by the Israel forces. What say that? They said the Palestinians died in an explosion. But what? Is that true? They died in an explosion? They died in a random explosion? No. The Israel harsh force killed them. They exploded them. But media never said like that. We need to figure out something. This framing effect didn't make our people angry enough to stand up and take action for years. Because it was normal. Everyone can die in a traffic accident, right? Yeah, it was something like that. Everyone can die in a random explosion, but it's not happened right this way. The Palestinian people, as Nida said, thank you again for him, exploded by Israel harsh force. They forced out of their own homes. But today, we are living in an age that called, what was that? I'm on high school, and my history grades isn't excellence. I can't remember what we age in right now, but was it space age, news age? No. Oh, that's not important. I can call this age digital age, because everything's smart right now. Our phones, our cars, our houses are smart. And the social media developed never this thing, this time. But we need to figure out another thing too. What we does in this age? Choices. The media made us and ordered us to choose something, A or B, you or me, that or this, the Mercedes or BMW or BMW. That's not important. We need to choose caring what's happening on the Palestine. That's the most important choices we do today. Yes, maybe media made us late. Maybe the media world made the world late. But give me an answer. Being late could be an excuse to stay silent? I don't think so. It never can be an excuse. No, anything couldn't be an excuse to stay silent. We need to talk. We can change the station of the Palestine while talking. Yeah, it seems impossible. Maybe we can change the past. It's over. But if we talk enough, if we talk with courage, if we talk with belief and faith, we can change the future. There is no silence anymore. Listen up, please. There is no silence anymore. It is time to speak about Palestine loudly and hopefully. Thank you.
Thank you, Yahya. We have certainly covered immense intellectual and emotional ground this morning. We will now take a brief break.
Please enjoy some coffee and refreshments in the foyer. We ask that you return to your seats promptly in 40 minutes so we can continue with our esteemed lineup. Thank you.
Test.
Ses.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the break. We resume our program with a true expert on the history and significance of Al-Quds. Dr. Abdullah Maruf Omar is a distinguished academic who has dedicated his career to studying Jerusalem and the Al-Aqsa Mosque.
We are honored to have him share his deep expertise with us today. Dr. Maruf, please join us on stage.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. First of all, I would like to thank everybody who's involved in this program, and I would like to thank you very much for this great invitation and to visit this place, to visit this great university, and to speak with this distinguished guests. And I'm really honored to be here today speaking about our beloved city, Jerusalem. I know that we are concentrating here on what is happening in Gaza and what has been happening in Gaza for the past 2.5 years now, and it's about to become 3 years very soon. But I need here to speak within this half an hour that I have today about the core of the whole issue, the core of what has always been happening in Palestine, and I argue maybe in the whole world, which is the city of Jerusalem. Now, when we speak about Jerusalem, some people might think that what is happening in Jerusalem is far from what is happening in Gaza, but actually it is not. Because what happened in October 7th was named and titled after Al-Aqsa Mosque. It was called Tufan Al-Aqsa. That operation that happened during that day, that event was named after Al-Aqsa Mosque. And this is something that some in the Israeli far right actually understood, and they were speaking about it. I have a video on my phone that I actually consider one of the most important sources that we need to realize and understand and remind ourselves every time or every now and then during these days. It was shot in Masjid Al-Aqsa in August 2024. That means about 1 year through the war, about 10 months after the beginning of the war. There was this guy named Moshe Viglin. Moshe Viglin, who doesn't know, for whoever do not know who this person or doesn't know who this person is an Israeli political figure. He used to be a member of the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. And he's the head of one of the ultra-far right parties in Israel named Zehut. Zehut means identity. Identity. So this person broke into Al-Aqsa Mosque during that day, and he gave a speech before doing what is called the lineage there, or prostration inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque that the settlers are doing every day. He said in this video that they, he means of course the Palestinians, named this war Al-Aqsa Mosque War. And I, Moshe Viglin, tell them that they were right. The war is happening in its military form in Gaza, and that is right. By the way, he is speaking until now. But actually, I need to tell the people that the war is happening from the beginning in this place, in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Then he continued saying, Israel is moving from a failure to another failure on the southern and the northern fronts. He meant at that time Gaza and South Lebanon, because Israel was losing during those days in Gaza and South Lebanon. He said then, but the only place that Israel can gain a strategic victory is this place, the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That is how the ultra-right wing in Israel think. That is how they believe this war must end. This is why throughout the war, there was another war that has been happening inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque and in the city of Jerusalem. And we know that at the beginning of this, the last fight or the last war between Israel and Iran, when it began, the first thing that Israel did was actually to close the Al-Aqsa Mosque and close the Holy Sepulchre Church. We know that, and that was during Ramadan, during the month of Ramadan, for the first time ever. For the first time ever, since 839 years, Al-Aqsa Mosque did not witness the last Jum'ah prayer, Friday prayer in the Al-Aqsa Mosque in Ramadan. For the first time ever since 839 years, Al-Aqsa Mosque did not witness the Bayram Namaz, the Eid prayer, for the first time in over 8 centuries. Do you know why? Because Israel believes that the core of this fight, the core of this issue lays actually within that city, within Jerusalem. This is why Itamar Ben-Gvir took this issue as his personal issue, and he's now presenting it in the coming elections in Israel to show the world and to show his followers, of course, that he is the true leader of the right in Israel, not Benjamin Netanyahu. What is the credential? What are the credentials that he's presenting to his followers? It is actually that he believes that I was the first one ever to let the Israeli settlers pray completely and freely inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I'm the only one, Itamar Ben-Gvir, of course, to prepare the ground to build a synagogue inside the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That is the thing. And by the way, the people of Gaza understand this. This is why many videos during the massacres that Israel used to do and is still doing in Gaza, we've seen many pictures and many footages of people, ordinary people, from our brothers and sisters in Gaza, within this war and during this very harsh time, prevailing for Al-Aqsa Mosque and claiming that it is all for Al-Aqsa. and it is all for the holy site. That is the thing that we need to understand. The centrality of Jerusalem in all of this fight. That doesn't mean that Jerusalem is more important than the bloodshed that is happening. Of course not. The bloodshed of one child in Gaza is more important for us than the whole world. Because humanity is now in a disgraced place where it should change the world, change the way how it looks at the preciousness of the blood of human beings. However, we need to look at the cause of this fight. Now, on October 7th, we know that the event began 6:30 or 5:30, I can't remember, in the morning. Now, the Israeli government during that day held its first ever meeting to negotiate or to check what is happening and try to deal what is happening at 1 o'clock afternoon. At 12 o'clock, Al-Aqsa Mosque was already closed. So what does that mean? It means that the initial answer of Benjamin Netanyahu's government to what happened on October 7th was in Jerusalem. Why? Because they listened to what was said in Gaza during that day. They listened to the Palestinian resistance movements who spoke about the centrality of Al-Aqsa Mosque and in Jerusalem to this operation. And this is, by the way, it's not new. I know that there is a speech in this program named It Did Not Begin on October 7th. I know that. And I agree with that. Why? Because if we look at the Palestinian struggle and the Palestinian issue throughout the quarter century, the last quarter century, then since the beginning of 2000, we will find that since the beginning of the year 2000, which means in the last 25, 26 years, the main core of the whole problems and clashes that's been happening in the region, in Palestine, was revolving around Al-Aqsa Mosque, starting from the Second Intifada, which was called the Intifada of Al-Aqsa, right? Not only that, I argue that the last 10 years, since 2015, until now, all of the fights and struggles and clashes in Palestine were central around Al-Aqsa Mosque, were centered around Al-Aqsa Mosque. 2015, there was Habbatul Quds, the clashes of Jerusalem, or the clashes of the knives, as they called it in Palestine. 2017, there was Bab al-Asbat revolution in Jerusalem. 2019, there was Bab al-Rahmah revolution in Al-Aqsa Mosque. 2021, there was the war that was called Sayf al-Quds, the sword of Jerusalem. It began in Jerusalem. It began in Al-Aqsa Mosque and it spread all over the Palestinian areas. In Gaza, West Bank, territories of 48, in Jerusalem. And it was revolved over Al-Aqsa Mosque. 2022, there was Ma'arakatul I'tikaf, the I'tikaf fight. And 2023, we had October 7th, which was named after Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I remember the first speech of the Palestinian resistance during that day. They gave 3 reasons for what happened on October 7th. The first one was what was happening in Al-Aqsa. That is the thing that we need to think about. And this gives us an understanding of why Israel is struggling now to finalize the issue of Jerusalem within these days, before the world wakes up to what is happening in the atrocities of Gaza. before the Palestinian people themselves completely wake up from the shake that happened after the atrocities that they witnessed in Gaza and in the West Bank that we're witnessing until now. So this is why Jerusalem is now becoming the center of the whole struggle. And we've seen just yesterday, I don't know if you've watched the news, or else maybe a lot of people are now concentrating on the World Cup, despite the fact of whatever. Oh, I know that, but in Jerusalem there was something else happening yesterday. Yesterday, the so-called Somaliland, so-called state, which was recognized only by Israel, the whole world. It's only Israel recognizes it. They opened their embassy in Jerusalem. Why? That was the request, the only request of Benjamin Netanyahu from Somaliland to recognize them. He said, I would recognize you. Israel will be the only one to recognize you and to give you all the support that you need in the world, as if Israel was a god or something, as Benjamin Netanyahu believes. And he said, we have demands. The first demand is that you open an embassy not in Tel Aviv, but in Jerusalem. Unfortunately, the so-called Somaliland accepted that. And they opened their embassy in Jerusalem to be the 7th embassy only in the whole world, to open their embassy in, or sorry, the only entity in the whole world to open their embassy in the city of Jerusalem. So 7 states, all of them are micro-states, except for the United States, of course. They opened their case, or their embassies in the city of Jerusalem. Why? Because Israel now considers the issue of Jerusalem as the main fact in the presence of the whole Israeli project in the world. That is the thing that we need to understand. That is why it is up to us here. And in particular, when we are speaking about Turkey, to have a special interest of what is happening in Jerusalem. Why? Because the last ever Muslim flag that was raised in Jerusalem before it fell for the British colonial occupation in 1917 was this Turkish flag. Was the very same flag that we have here in Istanbul. So it is our heritage, and it is our duty in this country, our special duty amongst the whole world, to have a special relationship to what is happening in Jerusalem, and to have a special understanding of what is happening in Jerusalem. Now, what is going to happen in the further coming days in Jerusalem according to the Israeli plan? Now we know that Israel is planning now, is concentrating now on finalizing the issue of the holy sites in Jerusalem. And here we're speaking mainly on Al-Aqsa Mosque, about Al-Aqsa Mosque. Now Israel has decided, and the decision is final in Israel, to end the Muslim sovereignty, the Muslim sole sovereignty over Al-Aqsa Mosque. Guys, ladies, you have to understand this. Israel has decided to finalize this issue. They are still afraid of the reaction of the Muslim world over such a huge move. However, they have a decision that they must do it. That's it. This is why now Israel is planning, according to what Middle East Monitor published a few weeks ago. Israel has already decided with the American administration today that it will end the Islamic Waqf, or the Jordanian Islamic Waqf sovereignty over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and establish something like the Peace Council that Donald Trump established for Gaza, something like that in Jerusalem for Al-Aqsa Mosque, to administer Al-Aqsa Mosque. Who is the mentor of this issue? Whose idea is that? Jared Kushner. And by the way, this is not a secret. He already publicized this and spoke about it since 2017. When he said that during the time in the eve of the opening of the American embassy in Jerusalem, Jared Kushner said that recognizing Jerusalem as the eternal capital of Israel means that Israel has the right to have the sovereignty over everything in Jerusalem, including its holy sites. He said that. And he said we need to find a way to apply this vision over what he called the Temple Mount, which is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. So that was already said in 2017, and it is now applied in 2026. So Jerusalem is now in the eye of the storm. And there is a huge storm happening and coming, not only for the city of Jerusalem with its Christian and Muslim components, but for the most important core area in Jerusalem, the holy sites. And Jerusalem is nothing without its holy sites. Jerusalem, the importance of Jerusalem lays within the religion issue and the religious importance. We're not speaking here about preaching or something. No, that is a fact. It has always been the case. Jerusalem lays within its holy sites. Muslim holy sites, Christian holy sites, and of course, the Jewish importance and the Jewish synagogues in Jerusalem. So, what is happening now is that the Israeli government has already had the decision, and they gave the decision, and they gave the orders to begin the application of this vision, which will completely remove the Muslim sovereignty over Al-Aqsa Mosque. Some people might come and argue, and some people actually argued with me and claimed that, well, you might be over or exaggerating. Why? Because Israel does not want to take Al-Aqsa Mosque as a whole. They just want to share it. They just want to build a small synagogue within Al-Aqsa Mosque. And I say, history is between me and you. And by the way, I'm not speaking about old history. I'm speaking about what you see in front of your eyes. If you just go 30 kilometers only to the west, to the south of Jerusalem, the same distance from here to Istanbul airport, you will see a mosque called the Ibrahimi Mosque, the mosque of Sayyidina Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. That mosque had exactly the same scenario that we are witnessing in Al-Aqsa Mosque today. In 1967, Israel occupied Hebron, Khalil al-Rahman. And they claimed at that time that because they believe in Abraham, or as they call him, Abraham Avinu, they claimed that his mosque has to be opened for both Muslims and Jews. And the settlers just wanted just one time a day to come and pay respect to Prophet Abraham or Ibrahim alayhi salatu. That was in 1967. So a day after a day by a day, this 1 hour became a whole time sector dedicated to the Israeli settlers. And it became twice a day until 1994, when Baruch Goldstein, the mentor of Itamar Ben-Gvir and his role model, committed the massacre of the Ibrahimi Mosque in the middle of Ramadan. When he massacred 32 Muslims when they were prostrating doing the sujood in Fajr Namaz, in the prayer, Sabah Namaz. Now, what happened after that? How did Israel react to what happened during that day? Instead of banning the Israeli settlers from entering that mosque, they gave them 54% of the mosque. Completely. And it became a synagogue. So the mosque was divided, not by time now, but the land itself was divided between Muslims and the Israeli settlers. Did it finish there? No, of course. Whenever there was a problem, especially from the year 2000 when the Intifada of Al-Aqsa erupted, starting from that time, Muslims were banned from entering the mosque, where the Israeli settlers were never banned, until the moment that Israel was wanting came in 2009. In 2009, Israel declared officially that the Ibrahimi Mosque is a part of the Jewish heritage. What does that mean legally? It meant that from that moment, according to the Israeli vision and according to the Israeli law, the Ibrahimi Mosque was no longer a mosque where Jews are allowed to pray in. From that moment, the Ibrahimi Mosque became a synagogue where Muslims were allowed to pray in. Nothing changed. Unfortunately, the whole Muslim world was, I don't know, sleeping or didn't understand what was happening during that time. This happened in 2009. About 15 years after that, or 16 years after that, Israel decided to strike for the last time. In 2025, last year, Israel issued 2 decisions. One of them is to strip the Muslim Waqf and the ministry, the Palestinian Ministry of Islamic Affairs, from the authority to religiously administer the Ibrahimi Mosque and give the administration, the religious administration, which is the religious sovereignty over the Ibrahimi Mosque, to the religious council of the illegal settlement of Kiryat Arba, where Itamar Ben Gvir resides, by the way. That was the decision that was taken in 2025, at the end of 2025. The beginning of this year, the second decision came where the Israeli authorities decided to strip the municipality of Hebron, the Palestinian municipality of Hebron, from administering all the fixings and cleanings over the mosque and give it to the Israeli army. What does that mean? It means that it is from now on no longer a Muslim area, and the Muslims have no right on that mosque. That is the scenario that is now being planned to Al-Aqsa Mosque, for Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is why Israel is lying. Netanyahu is lying. The Israeli right is lying. The Israeli left is lying. The American administration is lying. Jared Kushner is lying. All of them are lying when they claim that they don't want to take the Al-Aqsa Mosque as a whole, but they just want to have a part of it. And we need to say clearly and loudly that there is absolutely no right to anyone around the world, no religion, no race, no country, no political entity, to have any form of sovereignty over the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but the Muslim sovereignty solely. That is what the international law says. That is what the religious law says, that has always been there for 14 centuries. That is the thing that we need to understand. When Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu entered Jerusalem, Al-Aqsa Mosque was out of the city of Jerusalem. And I'm a historian and I know what I'm talking about. So the Muslims did not take the Al-Aqsa Mosque from anybody. Umar did not claim the Al-Aqsa Mosque from anybody. The Muslims came to a mosque that was out of the city of Jerusalem, ruined, desecrated. So no one has the right today to claim any sovereignty over the Al-Aqsa Mosque whatsoever. Whatsoever. And that is the thing that you need to put in your mind and spread around our society here. From this university, we need to spread this word. We need to understand this and to let our people in this country and for all the people around the world to understand. This is why some people might think that the war has ended in Gaza. But no, it didn't end in Gaza. It didn't end in Jerusalem. And I don't think that it will end in Palestine until justice is restored to this land. Again, I would like to thank you very much for this opportunity. And Mohammed Hujam, I owe you an apology because your picture is so young. Mashallah, you are young, mashallah. But because I was thinking that I was speaking to a student, actually. This is why I didn't say Hujam in my correspondence with you. So I apologize for you in front of everybody. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for this opportunity here. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Maruf. Next, I would like to invite Marmara Anatolian İmam Hatip High School 9th grade student Yahya Mavituna to the podium.
Assalamu alaikum. First of all, there is a big difference between seeing reality and seeing the reality that is shown to us. Most people believe that the media simply reflects the world as it is, like a clear window. But in reality, media often works more like a filter. It decides which events become headlines, which images are shown, which voices are heard, and even which words are used to describe what is happening. Because of this, media has become one of the most powerful tools manipulating how people understand the world today. Before discussing current events, it is important to understand the media influence is not something new. Let's start with movies. After World War II, many influential figures in Hollywood strongly supported the creation of Israel, since they controlled major studios and possessed the resources to produce films. They were able to shape how audiences viewed the region. A famous example is the 1960 film Exodus. The movie portrayed the founders of Israel as heroic and courageous figures. At the same time, Palestinians, who were the original residents, were largely ignored or portrayed as the evil side. This pattern continued for decades. Many Western films and television shows repeated similar narratives, while Palestinian perspectives were rarely given the same platform or financial support. As a result, generations grew up seeing one side of the story far more often than the other. But this issue is not limited to entertainment. It also affects the news we consume every day. The first way this happens is through language. Words matter. One of the clearest examples of this can be seen in the biggest genocide of modern era, Gaza. When Israelis are harmed, news reports often use direct and active language. People are described as being attacked, killed, murdered, or even massacred. However, when Palestinians are harmed, reports frequently use more passive language, such as died in clashes or lost their lives. The event may be more tragic for one side, but the wording can change how audiences emotionally interpret what happened. The second pattern involves names and numbers. When Israeli victims are reported on, audiences often learn their names, see their photographs, and hear interviews with family members. But Palestinian victims are frequently presented as statistics, just numbers. When people become numbers instead of individuals, it becomes harder for audiences to connect emotionally, to make empathy with their suffering. The third pattern concerns who gets the microphone. Western media outlets often rely heavily on official Israeli Zionist spokespersons and government representatives. Palestinian voices, meanwhile, are given less space or are treated with a lot of skepticism. Just these differences significantly influence public opinion. Since the Zionists consider any means justified, they use the media towards this way. Authorities which defend and follow these mindsets are also a Zionist character. As Muslims, we are also reminded of the importance of verifying information before accepting it. In Surah Al-Hujurat, verse 6, Allah says, "O you who have believed, if a rebellious or evildoer brings you news, verify it, lest you harm people in ignorance and then become regretful for what you have done." This verse teaches us an important lesson. We should not accept every piece of information without investigation. We must question, verify, and seek evidence before forming judgments. This principle is especially relevant in today's digital world, where information spreads faster than ever before. So what can we do? The answer is not to stop watching movies or stop following the news. The answer is to think critically. First of all, change your feed. Don't only look at Western sources. Spread it to not only BBC, CNN, and the New York Times. Look at Al Jazeera, TRT World, or many other sources like that. Support the missing forces too. If Hollywood won't tell Palestinian stories, go find the filmmakers who will, such as the Watermelon Media. Watch movies and documentaries made by Palestinian artists. When we give those stories our views and our support, we prove that people want to hear the whole truth, not just one side. Third of all, question everything. Whenever you read a headline, pause and ask yourself, whose voice is missing here? Why did they use the specific word? Or are they showing me a person or just a number? You have the power to demand fair reporting. By changing what you watch, what you listen to, and how you think critically about your feed, you can help build a world where everyone's story gets told. Thank you.
Thank you, Yahya. Our final keynote of day one delves into the crucial intersection of international law and humanitarian rights. Assistant Professor Hassan Basri Bulbul is a highly respected academic whose work rigorously examines the frameworks of international justice.
Today, as the international community's mechanisms are put to the ultimate test, he will speak on Palestine refugees and UNRWA. Please welcome him.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Hassan Basri Bulbul. I work for this university at the Faculty of Law. I teach public international law and international human rights law. I was contacted with one of the graduates of your university, Mehmet Fateh. So he is studying in our law school. So he mentioned about the program, and then I was really happy to contribute because I think it's an amazing program, particularly organized by very young people like you. I was really impressed by the preparations, the organization. Really, I'm not saying this for a courtesy. I was also saying this to your English teacher, Rushdie Hoca. I remember my high school years. I was not really interested in doing these kind of things, organizing a conference in a university, in one of the best universities in the country, and then inviting the most distinguished people like Sami El-Arian, Berdal Aral. This is quite impressive, I would say. I would like to congratulate you and your teachers for organizing this. I think it will contribute you the most. Being involved with such a program, I think will open your horizons, and then being in the university environment at this age, at this level, will also contribute your development. I was also saying him that if this was organized earlier during the term, before we had our final exams, you would have had some chance to meet our students as well. That would allow you, allowed you some interaction between university students and you guys. Anyway, maybe next time you could think of these as well. So thank you for everything. I welcome you all to Boğaziçi University. Today, I'll be speaking about Palestinian refugees and an international organization which was created for their situation. United Nations Work and Relief Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East. This is how I will call UNRWA abbreviation. Yeah? So this UN institution is about Palestine refugees, and I'll be engaging with Palestine refugees and this institution from a critical perspective as much as possible. Okay, so since its establishment, the United Nations has played some role in enabling Palestinian suffering. So as an extension of the British colonial project of creating a Jewish homeland in the Palestinian territories, United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution, which is Resolution 181. It was about dividing Palestinian territories between Jews and Arabs in 1947. So this was adopted in the United Nations General Assembly as a solution to the problem. But this resolution, 191, starkly contradicted realities on the ground. So Jews have been provided a significant amount of territory despite their much lower population in the country. In terms of land ownership and in terms of the population distribution, obviously Palestinians and Arabs, Christians, Muslims, they were all overwhelmingly more than the Jewish population in the area, but in a very unjust way, United Nations allocated Palestinian territories to the Jewish people more than they allocated territories to Palestinian people. So it is, I would say, it is the first original sin of the United Nations, which really had consequences, and those consequences have not been undone until so far. So this reflects the start of mistakes and then subsequent efforts to alleviate Palestinian suffering have been palliative within the UN framework, I would say. So because the UN framework just created a structure for the British colonial project of creating a Jewish homeland in Palestine. So the UN knew that this was this division of the country will create tension in the region. It was not something unexpected. Obviously, if you allocate more territory to less people, then this will create problem. And it happened in 1947. We had conflicts started. So it resulted in an ethnic cleansing of Palestinians by the Jewish militia, Zionist militia, I would say. So those Zionist militia have later become the foundations of what they call today IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, or as we call Israeli Offense Forces. So immediately, the UN chose to recognize Israel by admitting them into the organization. So if a country wants to be a member of the United Nations, there is a condition. They have to be peace-loving countries. So Israel was easily accepted into United Nations as one of those peace-loving countries. For Palestinians, the United Nations created this refugee organization for humanitarian assistance. So United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine refugees. So it means that UN effectively endorsed sovereignty for Israelis while providing a humanitarian administration for Palestinians. So one was deemed worthy of being an agent entitled to exercise all rights and obligations in international law as full actor. The other was to be a subject, a perpetual victim dependent on humanitarian assistance for their survival. Yeah? So this is the colonial genesis of the UNRWA. So it was born out of these colonial conditions, I would say. But the thing is that it evolved. The role of UNRWA evolved through the time. So I'm going to talk about the evolving role of UNRWA, but I'll quote a professor from United States, Susan Akram. So she says, in order to emphasize how Palestine refugees are important in this conflict, in order to emphasize how displaced people are crucial, she says, I often think of the Palestine-Israeli conflict as the fault line of the world's conflict, fault line, fay hattı, and the Palestinian refugee situation as the fault line of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So she's trying to say, if a problem occurs in Palestine, this is such a fault line that this problem cannot be confined to Palestine. There will be ramifications or consequences for the region, for the world. Yeah? So it is such an important fault line. This conflict can spread across the region and across the world as well. So this is what we are seeing indeed. After the 7th of October, this situation has been spread in the region. Israel attacked in Lebanon, Israel attacked with United States to Iran, other countries. I think she's right in that sense. And she also says that a Palestine refugee problem is the fault line of the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. So without resolving Palestinian refugee problem, you cannot really resolve this conflict. It is so crucial. Why? As Sami El-Arian was talking about the Zionist nature of the two-state proposals. So just think of now of one state and the right of return of Palestinian refugees is recognized. So let me give you some numbers for you to comprehend this reality. So today, if you remember the map of the historic Palestine, yeah, so this one. So if you look at the population here, so there are 2 million Palestinians in Gaza, 3 million Palestinians in West Bank, and 2 million Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel, which makes like 7 million. And the total population of Israel is 9 million, but 2 million is Arab. So 7 million Jewish citizens and 2 million Arab citizens. So if you look at the picture, then in this historic Palestinian territories, despite 75 years of settler colonial Zionist project, we still have 7 million Palestinians and 7 million Jewish people. But Palestinians are also displaced. At the end of 1940s, between 750,000 and 900,000 Palestinians have been displaced forcibly. There was an ethnic cleansing. And then their numbers only increased since then in the neighboring countries, in Jordan, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iraq. Yeah? There are also Palestinians in diaspora in European countries, etc. So if you put them all together, we have like 14 million Palestinians in the world. So if you allow the return of Palestinian refugees, it means that it's going to be impossible for Israel to create a Zionist state, continue that state in that nature. So right of return then is quite an ontologic problem for Israeli state. It threatens the survival of the Jewish nature of the state. So if we say to them, okay, we don't want to have two states, let's have one single democratic state. We agree that the name is going to be Israel. We don't care about this, let's say. But what we want is the recognition of the right of return and elections. So obviously Palestinians will dominate. That's why Israel has been resisting to recognize the right of return of Palestinian refugees, even though this right of return has been clearly recognized by international law, by United Nations, and by international institutions. So right of return is also quite crucial for Palestinians, because if you want to exist in your territory, if you want to establish your state in a territory, you need population. So one of the elements of the state is population, and then you would need an effective government, and then you would need a territory. But one of the most important elements is the population. So if you don't have the population in that territory, then your claim to your self-determination, your claim to your statehood is under danger. So this Palestinian refugee problem is then crucial for both Israelis and for both Palestinians. Obviously, international law, morality, and conscience is always in this conflict with Palestinians here in the context of right of return. Okay, so I'd like to provide some information about UNRWA briefly. How much time do I have, by the way? 15 minutes, okay. So UNRWA, as I said, is a UN agency. It was established after the 1948 conflict in order to provide some assistance to Palestinian refugees. It operates in 5 regions: in Gaza, in West Bank, in Syria, in Jordan, and in Lebanon. UNRWA provides humanitarian assistance, jobs, development, healthcare, and also, maybe most importantly, education. UNRWA has schools in all of these regions. And then most UNRWA personnel are Palestinians. So it's an international organization. It is a UN agency, but most of the workers of UNRWA are Palestinians themselves. So they are quite influential on the organization and running of the UNRWA. So they teach Palestinian identity in their schools. They teach about self-determination of Palestinians. They teach about resistance. So for these kind of activities, it's become a danger for Israelis, because UNRWA creates some narrative of being a Palestinian. Also, you know, Palestinians live in different regions, lives in different countries in the region. UNRWA is one of the organizations that combine all Palestinians in the region, regardless of the borders. So it is a uniting place for Palestinians. In that sense, it is important for the self-determination of Palestinians. Also, through education, it's become quite important for the self-determination of Palestinians, since it creates Palestinian identity. So, initially, Israel regarded UNRWA as a necessary evil, because Israel knew that this organization will take care of refugees. Otherwise, it is Israel's responsibility to provide for the displaced people that it contributed for their displacement. So there is an agency doing this job, so it's good for Israelis. So that was the understanding in 1960s. But since UNRWA was populated by the Palestinian workers, since they became more active, proactive in terms of Palestinian identity, it's become unnecessary evil for Israelis during the time. So for this reason, Israel has started attacking UNRWA through multiple methods. There is another reason for attacking UNRWA. I have to say this as well. UNRWA registers Palestinian refugees. UNRWA registers Palestinian refugees, and the children are also registered. The new generations are also registered as Palestinian refugees. So they, through the registration of UNRWA, we are able to keep these records. And more and more people, as the refugee population increases, then starts claiming their right of return to their homeland, which becomes a burden on Israel. Yeah? So it only increases. So Israel says that UNRWA is creating an obstacle for the resolution of this conflict, since it enables Palestinians to have their refugee status. So this is the Israeli claim. So then UNRWA institutionalizes the Palestinian refugee issue, which then comes to the negotiation table before Israel as one of the most difficult elements in the negotiations. So Israel doesn't want Palestinians' return, but UNRWA is promoting Palestinians' return to some extent by registering them. So for these reasons, Israel has kept attacking UNRWA in the recent years, and they attacked UNRWA buildings, UNRWA schools, they bombed UNRWA hospitals, they killed UNRWA personnel in Gaza, and then they've been making black propaganda against UNRWA in different parts of the world, particularly in the Western world. So one particular event, one particular propaganda of Israel was regarding 7th of October. UNRWA has like 30,000 personnel, and Israel claimed that 9-10 of them, or 9-10 of the beneficiaries, not even personnel, I don't really remember right now, has attended 7th of October attacks against Israel. So Israel is saying that the people of UN agency is attacking Israel. That is the claim. It has never been verified. There was no evidence. But only by this claim, European powers, Western powers, including United States, was convinced that they should cut the funding that provided to UNRWA. And then they did. They did cut their funding to UNRWA. Imagine 75% of the Gaza population are refugees. They are dependent on UNRWA assistance or UNRWA facilities for their daily life. We are talking about 2024. This is just after the International Court of Justice said that there is a risk of genocide in Gaza. This is just after that International Court of Justice held that Israel must enable the passage of humanitarian assistance to Gaza. And this UNRWA is the backbone of the humanitarian system in Gaza. It's been operating in 75 years. And then all other organizations, NGOs are dependent on the UNRWA structure. So International Court of Justice says that humanitarian assistance should enter, but those European powers, including the United States, are saying that we are going to cut our funding to these humanitarian organization. ICJ, International Court of Justice, saying that if humanitarian assistance is not allowed, the people will be starving and it will be genocide. In these conditions, they are cutting their fund to UNRWA, which I think is complicity of those Western powers in the genocide in Gaza. Because we are saying that people are dying. People are dying because of hunger, and then they are even cutting their assistance only for a claim which is not verified by Israel. So you see, the hierarchy of the lives in the eyes of the Western powers. So 7th of October has passed long ago. There is no risk at all now for the Israeli citizens by the hands of the UNRWA personnel, but there is a continuing risk of genocide, and then they are caring more about the Israelis, despite the fact that there is no real danger to their lives at that particular time, but we have genocide here. So I think we should not forget this. We should not forget this, and then we should not rely on these colonial structures as much as we can. So I have some more, but I think I can stop here. If there is any questions, then I'd be happy to respond in relation to Palestinian refugees and UNRWA. Yeah, for now, I think I can conclude here. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Bülbül, for shedding light on that critical issue. Now, we have a student speech by Elif Zeynep Polat from Kadıköy Anatolian İmam Hatip High School. Please join us on stage.
Assalamu alaikum. Honorable guests and dear brothers and sisters, today I want to address the critical situation in Palestine, the ongoing genocide and persecution, and most importantly, our collective and individual responsibilities. I would like to begin my speech with the powerful verses from Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 216. Fighting has been made obligatory upon you, believers, though you dislike it. Perhaps you dislike something which is good for you and like something which is bad for you. Allah knows and you do not know. Perhaps most of us are familiar with the second part of the verse, but we do not know the first part of the verse. Actually, the verse is about battle. Based on this, we need to look at the Palestine-Israel conflict from both sides. As Professor Dr. Mehmet Görmez said, 2 billion Muslims failed to protect 2 million of their brothers and sisters. But those 2 million Muslims taught the 2 billion Muslims the greatest lesson of their lives. Indeed, they became our teachers. When we saw Palestinians continuing their education inside destroyed houses, we learned the true meaning of hope and determination. When we witnessed a mother embracing her dead child, saying, "Sufficient for us is Allah, and He is the best disposer of affairs," we learned resignation, faith, and patience. When we watched children sharing their last crumbs of food with a cat, we learned unconditional mercy. Furthermore, they reminded us of their true strength. They are not powerless. A child can challenge an Israeli soldier because they believe in Allah. A Muslim is not afraid of anyone except Allah. It has different positive effects too. Countless people became Muslim after seeing Palestinian strength. They found this faith unbelievable and untouchable. From England, Italy, France, and the Netherlands, and other countries, lots of people became Muslim. Although they did not become Muslim, many people defended Palestine against their governments or against all the world. Hence, they tried to erase Palestine from the map, but the whole world became Palestine. Since the 7th of October, Israel started tyrannizing Palestine openly by showing all cruelty to everyone without shame. As a result, we saw Israel's real face and started to hear the silent whispers of Palestinians. Normally, we were blind and deaf and we did not know the truth. But now we have started to see, hear, and learn. In every country, people started to support Palestine and did lots of things like organizing protests and conferences, boycotting, and producing videos on social media to defend Palestine. The most important thing is we pray for them. It is the most powerful weapon we have. If we are aware of an injustice, we are obligated to act. As Muslims, we cannot be unreactive. There are various discussions about who will save Palestine. Some argue that we need a global Khalifa. However, in Islam, we are individually Khalifas too. In Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 30, Allah says, "And mention Muhammad when your Lord said to the angels, Indeed, I will make upon the earth successive authority, a vicegerent. They said, Will you place upon it one causes corruption therein and sheds blood, while we declare your praise and sanctify you. Allah said, Indeed, I know that which is you do not know." Our responsibility is implementing the divine laws of Allah. Thus, we should not say, I cannot do something. Even if we believe our individual impact is small, we must never belittle our efforts. Moreover, there are some small attempts which cause a big impact. I hope to see you in a world where babies and innocent peoples are not killed, where people no longer die of hunger, where human rights are not a lie, and Palestine is free. Thank you for listening to me.
As the final speech of today, Mohammed Fatih Merjan, please welcome to stage.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Mohammed Fatih Marjan, and today I'm going to talk about the topic, what would a fairer world look like? Well, the main topic of my speech is an issue that has nothing to do with regional, historical, or even ethnical issues. It has to be addressed as the problem of humanity as a whole. Namely, we will discuss what kind of world would be a better place to live. The main point of the topic under discussion lies in a wider discussion about justice. And the question to ask is, what would be a fairer world? To make the answer, the issue does not refer to some distinct countries or hypothetical ideas. Two humanitarian problems which deserve increased attention and help from the international community are Gaza and East Turkestan. Though the standards of justice might differ among cultures, the idea of achieving harmony and solidarity is still one of the foundations of our existence. Nowadays, one of the major problems facing the planet lies not only in its economical and technological development, but touches upon ethical values of high significance. We live in a world where the desire to provide people with the highest well-being and basic human rights should become the aim to achieve. But in practice, there exists many instances when the quality of everyday life depends on the region people are born in. Before we discuss our understanding of how to create a fairer world, it is necessary to understand what is lacking in the modern international community. Firstly, the example of Gaza shows the key role of maintaining the basics of human life, such as the ability to provide oneself with food, medicine, and security. Secondly, the case of East Turkestan demonstrates the necessity to protect the cultural identity of people who deserve to live and act as their ancestors did. Even though these two issues might be viewed separately at first, there exists a very similar feature of both, which refers to the problem of the international community that needs to be solved. Indeed, the international community often tends to be attracted to those regions that play an important part in terms of their energy richness or geographical position. However, people should not forget about innocent children who live in these regions. So, how should the international community and individuals deal with such challenges? First, it is necessary to adhere to the approach of universal and non-selective empathy. It implies being compassionate toward people because of their needs and problems, irrespective of any political affiliations. It is also essential for humanity to follow the ethics of helping people in need rather than calculating economic benefits in every instance. Secondly, one should use the approach of effective international law and global cooperation. The international community reaches its full potential only when there is harmony among global organizations. In all cases, when the welfare of people becomes a priority, all diplomatic, economic, and political measures should be taken to achieve success. Thirdly, one should work toward positive civic awareness and advocacy. In cases when governmental measures take some time, civil society and private individuals have to get involved with the help of education, art, cultural exchange, and discussion. It is possible to express ourselves and speak for those who have been victims of injustice. Being responsible citizens of the world, we need to overcome our indifference and build our sense of responsibility. It may seem difficult to find any hope, but what kind of a fairer world do we aim at? By definition, the concept of a fairer world means that one should not be predetermined by geography to a certain destiny. It means seeing a child from Gaza being happy to see a kite in the sky rather than afraid of its meaning. Moreover, this world implies being free to express culture and language. In addition, international cooperation should become a constant factor in achieving justice and making even the biggest states responsible for building the peaceful future of the world. Finally, in a fairer world, there will be more news about recovery rather than numbers concerning people who are having a hard time. Seeing how people on one continent encounter challenges, individuals on other continent should recognize how interconnected they are. This recognition will make everyone realize that global stability means a two-way street. Finally, the world I'm talking about is centered around compassion being the core of any virtue. Strength coming out of constructive actions. Beloved listeners, a fairer world in which everyone lives in equality is not something cannot be achieved. The present situation in the world depends on the level of awareness and advocacy in support of Gaza, East Turkestan, and every other area struggling for peace. Every constructive step taken, every action, and every good judgment helps create the framework of the world we will build. Peaceful existence will not come out of nowhere. It must be created together through a proper application of human conscience and making humanity its core principle. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Elif and Fatih. And thank you to all our speakers and attendees. This concludes day one of our program.
We look forward to seeing you all back here tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. sharp. Have a wonderful afternoon. Dear guests, we have some snacks and beverages outside, so you can hang out there.